going backwards.
Welcome to another episode of Toby Stupid Vlog.
Good morning, happy Monday. I'm going for a bit of a walk this morning because I can't this afternoon until I collect Amelia, because I have a meeting at 1:30, 1 till 2:30, and then from 3 to 5. So there's a half-hour window for lunch there. And then after I've collected Amelia, I have to come back and edit a podcast before midnight. So today is very busy. Tomorrow is also very busy, filming all day in London for the second part of the thing I went to film in Paris. And Wednesday we've got a surveyor coming round for the buyer on our flat. So it's quite a busy week. I'm trying not to let that occupy too much of my mind. Anyway, so this week is quite an important week in terms of both work and moving. I've said that so many times, I'm tired of saying how important this week is in terms of moving. But because the survey is done this week, and because hopefully everything else, i.e. the rider that we have to attach to the contract, is resolved this week, hopefully that means that we're then in a position to talk about what we'd like our exchange date to be. Suffice to say, this is the longest, most protracted sale of a property that I've ever been privy to, especially one that is a simple residential home, and it is taking its toll, and I will be ever so glad upon its completion. What I would like to say about selling houses generally is that there are plenty of estate agents, like the ones we use, Purple Bricks, who offer you very low fees, and or in some cases now no fees at all, to sell your home, and sort of lean on the fact that you're spending money unnecessarily if you go to somebody else. Now, having done it both ways now, I can tell you that that is simply not true. So if you measure the success of a house sale purely on your bank balance, then companies like Purple Bricks and Yopa and whatever the new one is I've forgotten the name of, that doesn't charge you anything at all, appear to be the winners. But that is a very cursory, superficial way of looking at a house sale. There is a lot of complexities that go along with it. The estate agent part is one small piece in that puzzle. Now, the way that a lot of these estate agents make their money, because there's you've got to remember that when there's no such thing as a free lunch. If you're not paying for something, then one or both of these things are true. Somebody else is, or you're not getting something. Them's the facts. So the way that these estate agents make their money is they have relationships with large conveyancing companies, and or they own conveyancing companies who they then force you to use. Otherwise you have to pay an additional amount of money to use your own conveyancer. Now, what I would say is, if you don't want to pay anything on your actual estate agent part, so be it. Under no circumstances, and I really do mean this, under no circumstances should you use the built-in conveyancers for these companies. There was lots of reasons for these. You can hear mine if you wish, but just go online and read other people's reviews. Broadly speaking, they're too big and strangely still too inexperienced. They don't have any personal touch with you, which means that there's no urgency. So if your property is anything beyond ultra simple, don't expect any fast completions. Also, don't necessarily expect them to fight your battles, because they're not being paid enough. So what I would say is, use whichever estate agent you want, but understand that you are going to have to pay more to use a proper conveyancer, and do spend that money. You will not regret it. I absolutely guarantee that, because the built-in conveyancing companies to these large online estate agents are at best average on a good day with a following wind. So that is my only advice to you, without bad mouthing anyone in particular. I would say, if I had gone to the trouble of getting my own conveyancer, spending the extra £1,000 it would have cost me, sounds like a lot, but it's not, I would have already completed the sale by now. In fact, I probably would have completed it before Christmas. Now, every month that we're not moving is a month that we're paying for storage, it's a month that we're living out of boxes, it's a month of unknowns, it's a month of me saying, I don't know whether I can do that job or not, being cagey about taking work, not moving on with our lives, living in limbo. So, frankly, £1,000 in those circumstances is really a nothing. Plus the fact that how much houses cost, we're talking tenths, maybe hundredths of percents at this point. Spend the money, get a proper conveyancer. Can you see the amazing sea of snowdrops that have sprung up already? Interestingly, the crocuses have come out almost at the same time as the snowdrops, maybe 2 weeks behind, no more than that. And some of the daffodils are up, which is slightly insane in February, certainly the first week of February. But it does look very nice. It's objectively beautiful. I think I may have mentioned before that February is my least favourite month of the year. It's luckily also the shortest. But it does occasionally have a spectacular day or two, like today. And the weird sort of dichotomy of global warming is that February is becoming less terrible with every year that passes. The trade-off is that the world is becoming more terrible. So you do have days like today which feel like an early spring day with the flowers out, but you shouldn't be having them. February should be the shittest month of the year. It should be really cold and miserable and dark. It should be wet, and it shouldn't be warm enough for things to be blooming as they are. So it's a weird one. So my mood is lifted today, but it's a short-term fix to a bigger problem. My mood is very, very dependent on the weather, I've noticed, and very dependent on whether that allows me to therefore go outside. So that's why we need to move closer to the outside. Good afternoon. I've come for a walk on the River Wey, which is very close to where we're moving to. I've just been to deliver things and take things out of storage. Usual kind of trade-off that happens. This is Bowers Lock, as you can see from the name. It's a very old lock and mill building. There was a mill here as well. 1650s, I think it was first put in. Beautiful place, very quiet, yet you're right next to the A3 actually. And then these are some wettish lands. And this is all the River Wey navigation. So this is the National Trust own this. This is part of the River Wey that you can take boats along, essentially. That's why there's locks and whatnot. It's not super busy, never really is, but it's very beautiful. And look at their garden, backs onto the river, got a boathouse, lovely. I need to go and make some calls to my solicitor to find out what's going on, because it feels like we're mostly there, but I always say that and it never is, so let's not get my expectation too high at this point. That's why I'm in the middle of the countryside, so I can sort of reduce my anxiety levels whilst I'm doing this. Let's see how it's going. It would literally be easier to get the Pope to answer the phone to me. So I haven't got through to them. As I mentioned in a previous rant this week, you should not use the built-in lawyers for the discount estate agents. My solicitor's company is so bad that every single other estate agent or other solicitor or anybody else that I talk to in the housing thing says, oh, them, God, they're terrible. That is literally the first thing they say. It's not really where you want to be. But, you know, I haven't moved house since 2009, so the market's changed dramatically. I didn't know what was good and what wasn't. What I wanted to do was sell my flat as quickly as possible. That's gone swimmingly. Anyway, let's enjoy this beautiful walk along the River Way and the A3, which we're now sort of just brushing the edge of before we turn our way into Sutton Place. And let's stress less about the terrible comings and goings of cheap ass conveyancers. It's nice around here. There's another lock, also from the 1650s. But like you feel like you're nowhere near anything. Like, you see the green hills beyond, because you can't see the road in the dip cleverly there. You see fields and fields. There's a church there, and fields with animals in. I've passed cows and horses. The occasional large farm. It's very, very nice. If the sun was out on a spring day, this would be spectacular. We're not far away from spring. I'm now on my way back because I've done a loop around Send. Yes, there's a place called Send. I don't know why. And I'm heading back the way I came, mostly. Back past Sutton Place, which I looked up. So Sutton Place is a really interesting Tudor building. It's really, really important historical building. And it has a lot of features that are considered of artistic importance. It's currently owned by a Russian billionaire. A Russian billionaire is, a synonym really for very wealthy, corrupt individual. But anyway, that's what we call them, Russian billionaires, because that way, it's not so libelous. But before that, it was owned by the world's richest man. So, it's had a few decent owners. And it was built by one of the courtiers of Henry VIII. So it's quite amazing. You can't see it from the canal side, riverside rather, and it's a shame, but there's probably a reason for that. Anyway, I'm going to continue my march back down the path. Good afternoon. So it is Thursday today, Thursday the 17th, I think, of February 2022. I say that only because, as you can see, it's a very peaceful, calm day with sort of patches of blue sky and sunshine. Not particularly warm, but it's February, so it's not too bad. And the reason I reference that is because tomorrow is a very large storm which is about to hit the United Kingdom. It'll be particularly bad on the west coast, but it's going to be pretty bad everywhere, to be honest. The only thing that's stronger in my lifetime will have been the gales of 1987, which were very, very bad in terms of millions of trees lost, and I think 22 people died actually. But yeah, it's going to be quite alarming tomorrow, and we'll be at home. The one thing that I'm just going for a walk here is, you don't know where I am. These are the suburbs of Guildford. I'm just going for a walk to go past our new house, because my only concern is that there's some damage done tomorrow, and who's going to pay for that? It's not obviously not our house yet, so I don't anticipate we'll be the person paying, but and I presume it's insured. So yes, I'm going for a walk today because we won't be able to get out properly tomorrow unless they've massively overestimated the strength of this gale, but I don't think they have. It's very nice here. I should move here. It's really very pleasant. That's a very English scene, isn't it? Across the hillside past the sheep and the oak tree. And there's a manor house, but it's wrapped because it caught fire a few years ago. That's Clarendon House. I bet they're not looking forward to the storm with all that scaffolding and what have you. The path I've come on, which is along this tree line here, it's incredibly muddy today. Really crazy. Another very sunny sort of pre-spring day in Kew, very blue. The sun is warm but the air is not, and you know, some of the flowers are out, the crocuses and the daffodils, some of the blossoms are opening. So it's very nice. It's very nice to go for a walk. Crystal and Amelia have gone to see Katie and Iris in Bushy Park this morning, so I thought I'd do some steps while I could. Elsewhere in the world things aren't quite so great. The house move has stalled again despite being on the home straight. It's very frustrating and I'm not ready to talk about it yet. The bigger issue, I suppose, is that at time of recording, what is going on with the Russian invasion of Ukraine for the second time in a decade. I mean, everyone said everything there is to be said. I would just add that this isn't at all surprising, in so much as myself personally, I've had literally a huge distrust of Putin since 2014. He made it very clear then that he does not care about other countries' borders, and that if he can't negotiate something, then he'll just take it by force. He is a criminal. And that's really all there is to it. So are his 35 associates that you can find on Wikipedia by looking for the Navalny list of 35 Russian oligarchs, one of whom will be my new neighbour when I finally move in. They're all nasty, nasty people, and they are all criminals. The only reason that none of them are in prison is because they are also in charge. They've been enabled by British and American governments, and in some cases ennobled, and you can't appease fascists, and you shouldn't try to either. They should be excluded from society and made as powerless as possible. If this came as a great shock to you, then I would suggest that you really haven't been paying attention to what's been going on in the world for the last 10 years. What about Syria? You haven't noticed how the Russian government propped up a despotic regime there? No? Killing its own people? What about South Ossetia? What about Georgia more generally? What about Belarus? What about Crimea? These are all acts of Russian aggression. They're very obviously empire building. And whilst, you know, we are the pot calling the kettle black, it doesn't mean that you can let it slide. My sincere hope is that Putin and as many of his oligarchs as possible die before their time, and that the people of Russia are finally given the chance to have a free and fair election to choose their next leader. I don't care whether he likes Europe or not, but he should be the representative of the Russian people. Similarly in Belarus, where they have only ever had one democratic election, which was the first one, and since then the ridiculous president of that country has just manipulated the results in such a way as to be blatant. Belarus was invaded by Russia years ago, albeit willingly, but the result is much the same. No say on your own destination. And it is hardly groundbreaking news to know that Russia has designs on the Baltic states, Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, probably all feeling reasonably vulnerable right now. They are members of NATO, so it would be interesting to see whether NATO has a strong response, not just strong words, to actually protecting its allies. I think what we have seen so far, and I realise that the war in Ukraine is very, very new, and there will no doubt still be something going on by the time I release this vlog in 12 months' time, is that the Russian armed forces are not quite what they'd like you to believe in terms of numbers, crack troops, and a great infrastructure. That is to say, we shouldn't be afraid of Russian aggression, because it is, up to this point, clearly actually not that intimidating. Ukraine has a tiny military force by comparison, and whilst it's hardly pushing back, it is holding its own for the moment in a way that no one expected at all. Crocuses. Fair play to them. Fair play to all of Ukraine for putting up with this bullshit. Shame on the Conservative Party for taking money and enabling this Russian regime. Shame on the Republican Party in the United States for doing the same, especially Trump trying to side with Russia against Ukraine in previous outings for his own political gain. Shame on the EU for not being harder with Russia to start with. Putin does not respect diplomacy, and there was no point in trying to deal with him. It should be much clearer from the outset, and you should have had mitigations in place to deal with the consequences of Russia deciding that it doesn't want to sell us gas, because that's really the only real hold that it has. And I say that as if it's nothing. It's not nothing, but the military aspect is not a real issue. The issue is energy security for Europe, and we could have done a lot more to prevent being in the situation that we are now. Ultimately, this may change our course of action, which would be fantastic. Move us away from fossil fuels finally, because of the despotic nature of those who control them. Q looks busy, unrelated. It is a beautiful day. I'm not going to talk any more about the Ukraine situation. It is too sad, to be honest, and I can't believe I'm going to say this. I long for the day when all of Europe is free. How insane is having to say that in 2022? The crocuses are very impressive right now, despite the storm from last week that did a fair bit of damage on the ground. They're all looking pretty happy. First signs of spring. They've been up a while now, because February's been so mild, really, till recently. It's a genuine carpet of purple.